God bless everybody today. It's November 15th of 2022. I had been doing some research a year or so ago on Armenia and Azerbaijan as we were starting to see that conflict go off, and Turkey was involved in that. I ran across an article or a video. I thought this video was extremely interesting, not only in the look that you can see this from a Muslim perspective, which I don't condone Islam or anything like that, so just realize it's a different perspective, but it feeds into the thought that we need to understand where Gog and Magog is, where this land is, where the Muslims think it is, because a lot of this is in the Koran, and the Koran, even though I haven't read the Koran, I've seen passages in the Koran, or I've read things about the Koran as I've done my biblical studies, and they tend to mirror a lot of things, but of course Allah in the Quran has been distorted. At least the Christians believe this. The Muslims wouldn't agree with that, but the Christians believe that the Quran has distorted the Bible. So regardless of that thought, and I'm a Christian, so I'm going to go with the Christian view, we should at least look at this research, because I think it matters. And one of the reasons I think it matters is it takes us into an area that even the Muslims believe there is a demarcation zone between Russia and the Middle East. And through this demarcation zone that was literally put there by God, now in their case it's Allah, and in our case it's God, to break this area apart so that it could not be attacked from the north. Now, as you go into this video, there's a expansion of Europe, or European Jews, which I'm not going to get into here, but just realize, even in this video, even though it may radiate up past this demarcation zone, he talks about the radiation, or the European Jews migrating into other areas to the east. So it really doesn't have anything to do with a Russian thing. But I wanted to show you this video because I thought it was extremely important in the geographical topography of the area, and why Russia would be almost impossible for Russia to launch a ground war down into the Middle East. Now I'm going to play a portion of this video, and it might be a little longer, but I think it really needs to be brought to the surface. No one's talking about this area. Even he alludes in the video that the Islamic teachers are missing it, that they aren't getting this, that they don't understand the profound topography, geological location of this place, and that it matters to the understanding of who Gog of Magog is, which is the leader of, I believe, Turkey. I've been talking about this for a while. And why? Because the demarcation line breaks the two worlds apart, and even the Islamic people like this man, and I can't say this guy's name to save my life probably, and that's not what it's about. It's the message of the understanding of how this relates to Christianity, and why this area matters, and why God would have placed this area on the planet, and that it breaks these two portions of the world apart. And this is one of the reasons I've been saying for a while, if you go into the Bible, if you go into the older Bibles, they talk, there is no Rosh, okay? if you go into chief prince in Hebrew, in Ezekiel 38 and 39, you'll realize that that only means that it's the leader of Gog. Gog is the leader of Magog. And if you go into Magog, into Tubal Meshech, that's in Turkey. So when people start moving you into Russia, you have to question them on this stuff, because there is no Rosh in the old Bibles. It's just a misinterpretation thing to people to build their narrative on Russia. And it's amazing, the Americans seem to have a levity to gravity to Russia. I'm not sure exactly what it is. We can't seem to get away from the Russian narrative in this country, but it's not a Russian thing. So I want to run this video a little bit. Now, I don't agree with a lot of the, like I say, I don't agree with the Muslim theology. I'm a Christian. I don't look at the Koran. I don't deal with that aspect. But the Quran comes up and it mimics or mirrors a lot of the Bible, because it's a fabrication of the Bible and a distortion. And I'm sure I'm going to take some damage on that, but I'm a Christian, so, in our view, it's a distortion. So let's watch some of this video, and I want to show you why this area, this demarcation zone between Turkey, Azerbaijan, Armenia, between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea really matters to understanding where this area is and why this demarcation zone was possibly placed there by God himself. So I'm just going to run this video, and we're going to watch a little bit of it so you can understand their point of view. You need to understand the other side of the view. You can't understand the problem if you don't understand both sides of the view. And I'm not going to go into the Quran or read it, because I don't really care to understand that deep into that ideology. But I can look at their information, especially something like this, because it's so profound in how this area looks and why it's important to where we're heading in the possible next few months. So let's watch a little bit of this. And like I say, I always give you my sources. Now, I don't want you to necessarily subscribe to this guy's channel. It's not what this is about. This is an educational thing to show you something that you've never probably ever seen before here. So let's watch this video a little bit. I'll only show you sections of it. If you want to go out and watch the whole thing, there's 2 parts of it. The second part is more about Jerusalem and different things. But let's watch a little bit of this. And hopefully I have this in a position where you can actually hear it, and it won't be distorted, because I'm actually pulling this off the computer itself. So I also have to work around ads, because I don't have an ad blocker, so hopefully this won't be a problem. But I definitely think this is important, and we should be watching some of this to get a better feel for what God's trying to tell us here in this area. So let's look at this real quick. Hopefully I can do this without too much distortion. So I'm gonna play this forward a little bit, and we'll see. We'll be doing just pieces of this. So anyway, let's check this out real quick.
Ask him about the great traveler who traveled to the 2 ends of the earth. And we are told that this traveler is called Zulkarnain, the one who possesses 2 corns. And corn can mean a horn, so Karnain will be 2 horns. And corn could also be an age or an epoch, a time. So Karnain will be 2 ages. So this is a man who is either of 2 horns or impacts upon 2 ages. I am going to tell you something about him, which must be remembered. إِنَّا مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. Behold, We established.
Now, look at this right now. We're talking about, right off the bat, he talks about the Medes, and this is going to come up a lot, okay? So just realize I'm pointing out certain things as he's going through this video because I think they're extremely important. Now, when you're talking about Cyrus and the Medes, you're talking about the Medo-Persian, okay? So realize what's going on here. Now, realize, see, this expands up into this area around the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. He's going to explain how this traveler moves 3 different times. He goes to a certain area and it leads him to a certain place, and that's up into these Caspian mountains, or Caucasus Mountains, excuse me. And so these Caucasus Mountains are really extreme. And so this is what I mean. Once you start to see this, you'll realize there is no way they're going to get a ground force down here from Russia into Iran easily through Azerbaijan, Armenia, and these areas. So I wanted to show you this because I think it's extremely important. But I also want you to realize this is the same footprint as Alexander the Great, which is the same footprint as the Ottoman Empire. Watch this video and how he lays this out. And it deals with the Medo-Persians and how this is going to affect us possibly in the next few months that I've been talking about. So let's watch a little more of this.
Established him on earth securely with the power and with the means, with the capacity and the knowledge and the right means to achieve anything that he might set out to achieve. And a superpower, not an ordinary power, a superpower. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا.
So he's bringing us back
And
to
so
media a lot here.
he chose the right means now to do what he wanted to do. حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس. He sets out on a journey to the west. And he reaches a place where the sun is setting. And there he found it setting in a body of water that was hamia, dark, murky, so visibility in that water will be very shallow. And there he came across a people. Is it possible for us to identify that body of water? If we can, we'll be on the way to locating the geographical location of the area in which we're talking about. We're going to do that in a moment, inshallah. Then Zulkarnain set off on the second journey now, and he's going to the rising of the sun. And when he had traveled to the distance that he could travel, the Quran does not tell us how far it was, he came upon a people, لَمْ نَجْعَلْ مِن دُونِهَا سِتْرًا, a people, لَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُمْ مِن دُونِهَا سِتْرًا. We have not provided for them as a covering other than this covering. It appears to us that it is the natural covering that you have from the sunshine. So a people living a primitive way of life. And he left them as they were. And then he went on to the third journey, which is verse number 92. And so now he travels in the third direction. إِذَا بَلَغَ بَيْنَ السَّدَّيْنِ. He comes to a place between a pass between two mountain ranges. On this side are mountains, on this side are mountains. And in between there is a pass. Can we locate Geographically, where are we talking about?
Look at this mountain pass. The pass runs this way, okay? Now realize the sides of this mountain on both sides are impassable. There's one small path that runs through here. That's it. It's so impassable that's why there's these things in the Muslim understanding about this area is that they believe it was put there for a reason by Allah in their case, or in our case, God. And so it's extremely important that we look at this. This runs all the way from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea, and it demarcates this land to where it breaks it apart. God did this because he did not want a Russian invasion into into a Christian, Jew, Muslim war coming up. And it has nothing to do with the Russians as they're bulked down in Ukraine up here. So realize that this is important. These are important things. God places these here for a reason. As he shows you this mountain area and this massive, valley that there's no way you could transverse over this topography. So just keep an eye on this, because this gets interesting.
Is it possible? A pass between two mountain ranges. And there he came across a people, لا يكادون يفقهون قولا. He came across a people whose language he could not understand, because their language was unique. Their language had no connections with other language in that region. It was a language which was not connected with all the other languages in that region. When they had learned to communicate with each other, then these people spoke to Zulkarnain and said to him, Ya Zulkarnain, O Zulkarnain, Inna Ya'juj wa Ma'juj mufsiduna fil ard. Gog and Magog are committing acts of fasad in our territory. So Gog and Magog have PhDs in fasad. O Zulkarnain, can you help us? You have the power. Can you build a barrier to protect us from these people? He should have said, I don't need to build any barrier. I'll move in there and I'll beat them up. And they won't touch you anymore. So I don't need...
So they built, and they're separating these two portions of the world for a reason. Okay, now he sort of takes the interpretation that, these new people, they can't understand them. This takes us into the Soviet area. But it's a demarcation between these two areas that he's literally placed the scar on the planet to break these two areas apart. So we can't basically join together. We can't, there's no way to merge easily in these two areas. You have to work at this.
Need to build any barrier. I'll go and teach them a lesson they'll never forget. But no, he didn't say that. They said, we're prepared to pay you. He said, I don't need your money. What Allah has given to me is more valuable. So he agreed to build a barrier. What I need from you is your labor. Help me with your manpower. And I'm going to build a barrier between you. Now, number 96, verse number 96. Bring me blocks of iron. And so that has to be a geographical location where there's iron ore. It has to be a geographical location where there are mountain ranges and a pass between the mountain ranges. It has to be a geographical location where on the left you have a body of water which is so dark and murky that visibility is very shallow. Okay? And it has to be an area where there are large deposits of iron ore. Bring me blocks of iron. And after he had covered the pass with blocks of iron, he said, build a furnace, blow with your bellows, and now bring me molten copper. So he poured the molten copper, and the engineers, we have an engineer here, tells me that this is to prevent rust. And after he had built the barrier and covered it, the Quran speaks, it changes from the word saddain to use another word, sadafain. In verse number 95, آتوني زبر الحديد حتى إذا ساوى بين الصدفين. Previously the word used was saddain, but now the word used is sadafain. Saddain is two barriers, two mountain ranges. But sadafain is something else. It is like the two sides of a shell. We're going to have some pictures of this now.
Now this is important because look at what he's saying. It's impassable. He's built this so, God put this down and he built it so sheer that there's no way to transverse between one side to the other with this massive gorge in the center. There's just no way for them to do this. So he's saying that he's divided this world with a condition that won't allow these two areas to merge. And so I think that's extremely important. How would you get a Russian army down through this topography? And even if you did, you'd be a sitting duck for any sniper or group of people that wanted to attack you. And it would end up terrible. You think it's bad in Ukraine. Can you imagine getting stuck in a valley, with sheer cliffs and groups of people raining armament and artillery and things down upon you? It would be incredibly insane. So let's watch a little more of this.
Two sides of a shell. You've been to the seashore. When you open a shell like this, it will join at the bottom, but open at the top. That's the shape of the pass between the mountains. Join at the bottom, open at the top. So when he had blocked off this space, this sadafain, now the molten copper is put on it, and then Gog and Magog could neither scale the barrier nor could they penetrate it, so they're now trapped behind the barrier. And so Zulkarnain now says, هَذَا رَحْمَةُ مِنْ This barrier is constructed in consequence of Allah's kindness and grace. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي But when that time comes of which my word has warned, إِذَا فُتِحَتْ They will not return to reclaim the town as their own until إِذَا فُتِحَتْ Until Gog and Magog are released. When that time comes for Gog and Magog to be released, so that Banu Israel...
So he's talking about Gog and Magog being released. And I've talked about this white seal being Erdogan as the white horseman and how he's going to, within the next few months, potentially attack Iran, end up in Egypt, and then back in Israel. That this demarcation zone tells us that this is an impenetrable area that can be not traversed from the north because he's blocked this off. And if you go to the southern side of this, where do we end up? We end up in Turkey. So this is extremely important. And I think we need to understand this is not a Russian thing. They're gonna be stuck up here. They're entrenched up there. They're not going anywhere. But Turkey's getting ready to unleash on the Middle East. And now that we've had this terrorist attack that they say is a Kurdish terrorist, and I'm not saying Kurdish terrorists. I don't know what they are. They're just an old people that live in multiple different countries to me. We can talk politics all day long. It's not what this is about. So the Kurds are important here. And he's going to keep going through this a little bit. I want to keep showing you sort of their view of this, but realize this is we're Christians, and so we're not, following with the Allah narrative here. Just realize what this is about.
To be brought back to the Holy Land. Brought back as a motley crowd. At that time, جَعَلَهُ دَكَّا. Allah is going to bring down this barrier and become dust. Now let's turn to the pictures and see whether we can locate. This is the Caucasus Mountains here. The white being the snow. And on the left side there is a body of water which is so dark and so murky with so much algae in it that it has been given a name. And that name has been there with it for many, many, many years. Even the time of Ibn Kathir. It's called the Black Sea. It's called the Black Sea. Why? Because it is so dark. If you go to the Mediterranean Sea and you're on a ship, you could see several meters underneath the water. But if you go to the Black Sea, you'll hardly be able to see more than 1 meter underneath the water. On this side of the Black Sea is the Caspian Sea. And in between the Caspian and the Black Sea is this body of land. So we see that Zulkarnain is traveling in that direction to the west, and then in this direction to the east. The Caucasus Mountains are an unbroken range of mountains from that end to this end. But in between the Caucasus Mountains, there's one pass, only one.
Only one.
It's called the Dariel Gorge. Let's see if we have...
Trying to drive an army through one pass.
There's the gorge, and there's one side, and there's the other side. And it's like an open shell. See, the Koran is describing this Sadafay. So we have, I believe, established for you the geographical location of Gog Magog. The people who are located behind the barrier. Behind the barrier, on that side of the Caucasus, were the Khazar.
Now I'm just going to run this forward just a little bit because it sort of shows the topography. He's driving on the road that goes through the pass, through portions of these mountain zones. And he's talking about the Khazar, or however he says this word, which is, he's talking about European Jews, okay? So he's not even talking about Russians. He's talking about European Jews and how they migrated and watered themselves down over time through intermarriage. Pure Jews aren't pure Jews anymore in the sense that they've interbred with other groups of people, sort of what he's talking about here. So just realize that he's not talking about Russians even in this portion. The Khazar, what he's talking about are the European Jews that have intermingled with the Muslim, or the Jews on the southern portion of that side, have intermingled with the people on the northern side, and now we have a watered down group of Jews. And you can take that for whatever it is. If you've intermarried in different racial groups, then you have watered down your line. You're not a pure Jew or whatever, and so. But just realize that he's not talking about the Russians here. But I want to show you a little bit of this because this is extremely interesting. There's just no way to move through this, and it would just be a logistical nightmare to try to get an army through this area. Just look at the sides of the cliffs.
On that side of the Caucasus were the Khazar, a tribe of people who converted and became Jews. Must have been on a Sunday morning. And some of them converted from Judaism and became Christians. Must have been on a Sunday evening.
I don't agree with everything
So you have
says.
You have Khazar who are Jews, and you have Khazar who are Christians. But they did not become Jews because of religious conviction.
I'm mainly I want you to hear the narrative here because it's important, I think, to understand their point of view here, just so you can get a different point of view. But look at the mountains here. This is what I'm mainly trying to get across to you, is look at how would you transverse large columns of armor and troops through this area. And even if you use this road, you'd be a sitting duck from both sides of any army. You know, they just destroy you as you're coming through this pass. And so it just, to me, it would be an impossible option. So let's look at this a little more and then we'll move on.
They became Jews as a matter of political convenience. So they don't particularly care for Torah and for the laws of diet and so on. So these are people who are Jews as a nation, but not as a religion. A nation, not a religion. These are the people who today control power in the world.
So I'm sort of going to end it there because that's the point I was trying to make, is that this is a extremely profound area in understanding how it's going to affect the Bible and how it's separated two sections of the planet in this massive scar that's been placed down upon the planet by God, and how he segregated this for a reason. He doesn't want the Russian thing to be a problem in the narrative of a Jewish, Christian, Muslim event that's coming up in the future. And even he's talking about, you know, not the Russians up north. He's talking about the Jews, or the people that came together with the Jews and then intermingled and over time had marriage, and then, you know, those two groups of people watered their lines down, which is, you know, I'm not trying to be mean here. That's just the way it works. So I think it's extremely important that we understand the topography, and why then that if you look at that demarcation and you look at the map, you realize that the place that he's broken off is in the land of basically Turkey. So if you move just south of that mountain range, yes, you end up in Azerbaijan and Armenia and these places, but you end up in Turkey, where is Tubal and Meshech is found, in the land of Magog, and the leader is Gog, and it's not Rosh, because Rosh is not mentioned in the older Bibles. So I just wanted to show you this. I think it's extremely important. I think it's a profound area of the planet. I'm glad when I did my research I found this video, just in the sense that it gives me a feel for that area and explains to me why this would be really hard to be a Russian invasion that's coming up, and with them bogged down in Ukraine and that's not going away anytime soon. And if they can't take Ukraine out, I'm not sure I exactly understand how they're going to then morph into an additional army that's going to break off and end up in another section of the world. You would end up being almost like Hitler, where you spread yourself to the point of you couldn't control your lines, you were too thin, and you're trying to take too much land, and you end up just failing. So keep an eye on these things. I think those dates of January 24th, potential attack on Iran, is important. As I've shown you in the paradigm, did a couple videos recently, and why this is an important area and how it affects biblical times at the biblical scripture at the end. God bless. Find the open door. Find Jesus. Have a great day.